Hey guys, as we somewhat, I'm going to put it this way, uh, see the end of the COVID-19 pandemic, we all, I'm sure I can say this as a general statement, we all love traveling to some degree. And Europe is one of the most popular summer slash winter travel destinations. Different parts are more popular for different times of year, such as during winter, Switzerland and Germany and France are very popular for skiing, as well as the Christmas markets in Frankfurt, Munich, and Berlin, while places like Italy are more popular for the summer and the UK. Now, here's the thing with going to Europe from Canada. You can't get there without flying overnight. Now, I know a lot of people who dread flying overnight, but there are some people who love it. I myself am one of them. I love overnight flights. But now this brings me to the question that a lot of people have asked me. What are some good ways to make my overnight flight pleasant and to not feel like crap when I arrive in my destination the next morning? So, I'll give you a little bit of a basics first. Your flight is going to be an overnight flight, meaning it's going to leave your destination here, your origin here in Canada, around between the hours of 8:30 and about 11, let's say, in the evening, Canada time, and you will arrive across the Atlantic Ocean in Europe somewhere between 7:30 and 10:30 local time in the morning. Now, this might seem a little bit daunting because you're flying in the pitch dark, basically, and only after your Atlantic crossing are you reaching daylight again. Now, there are people out there who sleep very well on planes, like me and my dad, but there are others, like a couple teachers of mine and my mom, who don't sleep well on planes and don't like overnight flights. But regardless if you're a good plane sleeper or not, I can give you 10 tips that will make your overnight flight enjoyable and pleasant and getting you ready for vacation. So here are my 10 tips for a successful overnight flight to Europe. The first tip that I have, clothing choice. Wear comfortable clothing. Maybe not PJs, but something you don't mind sleeping in, such as a light sweater and sweats or track pants. You don't want to wear anything too tight. You don't want to feel uncomfortable or cooped up at all. Right now I'm wearing a light t-shirt, a sweater, and some sweatpants, and this is in fact almost exactly what I wore when I flew home from BC, when I flew on my overnight flight home from Vancouver. It was just comfortable to wear. That's tip number one. Tip number two, what to eat and drink and what to avoid. You want to eat and drink well in advance of your flight, but do it a few hours in advance. You want to allow your body to digest quite a bit before your departure. You want to avoid caffeine, coffee, alcohol, or soft drinks, as well as any foods that are particularly spicy or strong in flavor that could be potentially stomach upsetting. I did not have much before I flew back from Vancouver. I Number one, I really wasn't hungry. I had like a granola bar and water, and that was it. I would recommend eating something light about 1 to 2 hours before you fly, and then it'll be much easier on you for your overnight flight if you don't have much after that. Um, when it comes to water, and this is going to be a good segue right into my next tip, you want to stay hydrated, of course. Of course, you do want to stay hydrated, but guzzle a good load of water 4 or 5 hours before you fly, because you want. This will actually leads me right to my third tip: avoid the plane bathroom. You want to make a trip to the bathroom just minutes before you board. Once you hit your seat, you're going to be there till you get off in the morning. Trust me, you'd much rather be sleeping than standing in line waiting to relieve yourself. I've been on 3 overnight flights in my life, and when I flew to Iceland, I had to get to use the bathroom in the middle of the night, and I was in the middle seat, so I had to crawl across to the aisle and then walk all the way down and then wait in line, and it's painful and not fun. So, again, limit your liquids intake 1 to 2 hours before you fly out, just to make your bladder happier for the duration of your flight. And the fourth thing, the neck pillow. Invest in a neck pillow. I got this nice one right here. It's just fun to wear sometimes. These gadgets saved my life on my overnight flight. I obtained mine from a very kind guy sitting beside me about halfway through my flight from Vancouver to Toronto. And they're great when you have to sleep sitting up or when you cannot lie down. Definitely recommend one of these, especially if you're going to be on an overnight flight of any sort, regardless, honestly, of where you're going, whether it's an overnight flight to the Caribbean or whether it's West Coast to East Coast flight, whether it's a flight to Europe or flight to Asia. It doesn't matter in my mind. You're going to want one of these big time. Now, the fifth tip that I have, I call it the sleeping shoulder. And if you're not traveling alone, if you're traveling with somebody, whether that's your parents, your friends, or whatnot, you want to have somebody sitting beside you on the corresponding side that you normally sleep on. If you're a side sleeper like me, I sleep on my left side. Um, it just makes your life easier because when we fall asleep, our bodies sag and relax, our muscles relax, and it causes us to slump over or fall over. Um, uh, it causes us to do that slightly. The neck pillow, what it does, it keeps you comfortable and it actually keeps your neck from bending the wrong way, so you don't wake up with a stiff neck. And it keeps you comfortable, of course, but it doesn't really take away from that full pillow sensation that your whole head gets when you normally sleep in your bed. Um, so make sure you have somebody on the side that you sleep on. So somebody, for example, somebody on my left, that doesn't care if you end up slumping onto their shoulder once you drift off. And one of my biggest tips is tip number 6, set your clock. For wherever your destination is, you want to turn your clock forward by the number of hours, the number of appropriate hours of time change, just before your departure time so that your body knows really what the time is. So for example, next winter I'm planning to fly to Geneva, Switzerland. So when I fly out of Montreal, going to Geneva, I will turn my clock forward by 6 hours because the difference is 6 hours forward. This may feel a little bit daunting because when you're flying out of Canada in the evening, it's going to be the dead middle of night in Europe. But you just got to accept that because trust me, if you put your body on that time zone, it will make your life much easier in the morning when you arrive. For example, I did that for my flight from Vancouver to Toronto. When I left, it was 11:45 local time in Vancouver. I turned my clock forward 3 hours, and that made it 2:45 in the morning. And I didn't fall asleep till 3 in the morning. That's 3 in the morning here. It was midnight out in Vancouver. But it made my life so much easier when I arrived just before 7 a.m. our time here in Toronto that following morning. And this leads me into my seventh tip, and that is get your sleep. You want to try to sleep from departure until the daylight emerges after the Atlantic crossing. And this helps your body adjust to the time zone, remove jet lag, and other crappy feelings that are associated with waking up in the dark. You want to feel rested and adjusted to the time as much as possible upon your arrival. If you're flying to Europe, you should be able to get about 5 or 6 hours of sleep at minimum, depending on where in Europe you're going. For example, like a flight to Dublin from Toronto is only 6 hours. You're only getting about 4.5 or 5. But if you're going to Geneva from Montreal like me, my flight is a total of 7 hours. So I could probably nail about 5.5 or 6 on that flight. And I'll do a future video that shows you how to calculate when daylight will arrive in your flight, how long you can sleep before it will become light again. And number 8 is one of my most important ones. The more time, the better. In some cases, like in my case, from Montreal to Geneva, your overnight flight will be the second leg of your journey. And they will come after a layover in a different airport other than your origin. For example, I'm flying from Toronto to Montreal, and then I have a 3.5-hour layover, and then I fly from Montreal to Geneva. And to avoid insomnia and anxiety and rushing, pick a first leg flight that leaves you with plenty layover time. Don't ever think that something like a 5-hour layover is too much. I mean, I don't like long layovers either, but in this case, it's never too much. In this case, I'll give you my example. I'm leaving at 4 o'clock from Toronto, getting into Montreal at 5:30, and then flying out at 8:45 to Geneva. Because let's say your first plane happens to be delayed by a long time and you don't leave a whole lot of layover time, or cushion times, like to call it, you risk missing your overnight flight, and that's never a good story. So, hey, if your first flight's on time, great. Use that layover time that you are left with once you arrive in your second airport to get food, to allow yourself to eat and digest, go to the washroom, drink lots of water, what have you, and then use the remaining time to go to your gate, don't rush, and have some chill time. And when you hit about a half-hour point or so prior to boarding, I suggest clicking off your phone, putting it on Do Not Disturb, and closing your eyes just to get your eyes ready. And even look out the window. It'll be pitch dark, so you can look out the window, and this will make the drift off to Dreamland a whole heck of a lot easier. Trust me on this one. My 9th tip here, other necessities. If you think you may have trouble drifting off, you want to carry some mild, fast-acting, fast-releasing melatonin pills with you. You want to take it as soon as the engines roar back for takeoff. Again, it's fast-acting for a reason. And then once you get in the air, you'll be gone out quickly. And then on the back end, when daylight emerges, you'll regain alertness and consciousness very quickly. I did this when I flew from Vancouver to Toronto. I took a couple melatonins just before I took off, like in the dying seconds before I got in the air out of Vancouver. And when I woke up, in this case, it was still dark because it was December. But as soon as we landed, I woke up right away and regained alertness very, very, very quickly. And a second thing, eye mask, earplugs. Those are a must. Trust me. You could have somebody sitting beside you, some random stranger who's a big time snorer. And in case any brightness shows, the eye mask helps as well. It obviously blocks the daylight. And in case the lights have to come on during the flight or if something happens, you're not awoken suddenly and feeling all nice and crappy. Not, you know what I mean? But trust me, you guys will thank me for saying that. And now the 10th tip. It's not really a tip for the overnight flight, but I'm going to throw it in. Your flight back. Your flight back from Europe is going to be a full daylight flight. You're going to leave late morning or early afternoon local time in Europe and arrive into Toronto sometime in the afternoon or early evening that day, same day. You want to sleep the first half of that flight, as when you leave Europe, it's going to be probably 6 or 7 in the morning here. Could be even earlier. And then when you arrive, it's going to be about 2 or 3 o'clock, but you're going to feel like it's about 8 p.m. So you want to sleep the first half of that flight as if you're sleeping in or sleeping for the morning and then waking up for the afternoon. That's just something I recommend doing as well. So those are my 10 tips for a successful overnight journey to Europe. For example, I'll give you my full example. So I'm flying to Geneva on December 16th. I'm leaving Toronto Pearson at 4 o'clock p.m., arriving in Montreal at 5:20 p.m. I have a 3-hour and 25-minute layover, so just about 3.5 hours, which is plenty of time for me to get food, go to the washroom, have water, you know what I mean? And then my flight to Geneva is at 8:50, and then I arrive into Geneva at 10 o'clock the next morning, local time. So when I depart for Geneva, I turn my clock forward to make it 2:50 a.m. I fall asleep. I wake up at about 9 a.m. local time. And then I'll touch on another video on how to calculate when the sun will rise during your flight. And then I arrive mid-morning into Geneva, and then that way I'll be adjusted and I won't feel jet-lagged or super, super tired. When I had my very first overnight flight, I was flying from Toronto to London Heathrow. I got no sleep on that flight, and London Heathrow is a mess of an airport. It's one of the busiest ones in the world. And that was not fun. You never want to go sleepless on an overnight flight. It just does not spell good news for you in the next morning. But yeah, those are my tips for a good overnight flight. And when I come back, my flight out of Geneva is at 12 noon. And then I arrive in Montreal at 2:45 p.m. But here in Toronto/Montreal, it's going to be 6 a.m. when I fly out. So I want to pick up a couple hours of sleep. At the start of the flight, that's why I put your window up, put your eye mask on, and you're good. And then that way I feel a little bit more refreshed and more oriented back to time zone. And again, change your clock back 6 hours when you're leaving or wherever you're leaving from, if you know what I mean. But yeah, that is my, those are my 10 tips for an overnight flight to Europe. I wish you the best of times out in Europe, wherever your destination might be. Europe's a wonderful place, regardless of where you go, except for Ukraine at this point in time. But yeah, good luck. Have fun. You got this. And before you know it, you'll be able to say, I had a successful overnight flight to Europe.